Welcome back, Chappelle. Welcome back to another one. However, though, this thing is going to fall apart, right? This alliance is going to fall apart due to the fact that Russia and Austria start fighting with one another, right? They start disagreeing on who could control the Balkan states. Now, where the Balkans are, just to give you a heads up, is in Southeast Europe where Greece is, right? So, like, Southeast Europe where Greece is includes places like Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, places like Hungary. The southern area of Hungary could be considered a part of the Balkans, Macedonia, all those areas that we talked about in the very beginning of this class, right? Well, those people that live there are mostly of this actually ethnic origin known as Slavic, right? Like, so Slavic people, are, for example, are Moldovians, Bulgarians, Bosnians, Serbians, all speak Slavic languages and have Slavic cultures. The other really big country that has Slavic culture as well is Russia. And so Russia felt they needed to support those smaller countries. Well, who controls a bunch of those smaller countries? Austria, right? And Austria doesn't want to let them go. So a lot of disagreements start going on between Russia and between Austria. And then to say, like, the worst thing that could possibly happen is Austria and Russia are like, they kind of like keep bickering back and forth, and Bismarck is able to mediate this argument. Well, unfortunately, though, Kaiser Wilhelm I dies, right? And his son takes over. And his son's name is Kaiser Wilhelm II. And this guy is an absolute idiot. And he helps single-handedly basically lead to World War I, because one of the first things that he does when he comes into office is he fires Bismarck. He fires Bismarck because he thinks he was puppeting his dad the entire time. And the biggest thing that happens is when it's time for that alliance to get renewed in 1887, it unfortunately falls apart because Wilhelm II decides to just side with Austria and let Russia go. Russia then ends up out in the mist, and remember, who do the Germans and not get along with at this point? The French. So what France does is they go out there and they court Russia over to them, and they begin drawing up new alliances, right? And so what's going to happen in the long run is Germany is going to make another alliance with Austria and Italy. The Triple Alliance will be formed, and that's going to be between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Now, Italy's a very important one that I need you to do me a favor really quick. Underline Italy and circle it and put a question mark next to them, because it's very, very strange, because at the beginning of the war, Italy is actually going to declare itself neutral, right? So very important that we understand that, ironically enough, Italy might have been in this alliance, but they never actually fought in this war alongside of these other alliance members. So France and Germany are massive enemies, as we know, following their loss in the Franco-Prussian War. And to protect Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm is going to sign treaties with Austria and Italy, promising to protect them should a war break out. Now, they are going to earn themselves a nickname, or a other name, or a whatever you want to call it. And they are going to be called the Central Powers, not to be confused with the Axis powers, because that is a World War II term, right? So now, but going forward though, this Central Powers coalition is going to be called this because they are literally in the center area of the map, and they are located centrally within Europe, because you have Germany, Austria, and Italy right there in the median level of the European continent, right? So there's another group that's going to come in and join them later on, but they're not going to join up until about October of 1914, right? Now, in a massive process of other crazy stuff going on, we're going to teach it a little bit differently, kind of out of order, but to give you a heads up looking down the pipe, then in opposition to the Central Powers, the Triple Entente is going to be formed. Now, I'm skipping over some stuff in history for anybody that's watching this video right now that's not in my classes, and you're like, this guy doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. I do know, and I'm fully aware that the Entente Cordiale was formed, the Franco-Russian alliance, and then also the Anglo-Russian alliance, then forming the Triple Entente. So calm down. I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands. Now, look, the Triple Entente is going to be formed in conjunction and opposition to the Central Powers. Now, what an entente is, just so you know, it's an informal agreement between countries, right? So an entente is like an understanding or an agreement. Just like France had an entente with the English because they could see the the English and German alliance deteriorating. And we're going to talk about the specific event here in a little while that led to that deterioration. It has to do with boats, right? So the French, the Russians, and the British are going to form that Triple Entente. Their nickname, they will also be known as the Allies, right? Just like they were in World War II. Now, this one's a little bit weird, okay? France is going to ally after the failure of the League of Three Emperors, right? Then France is going to ally with Great Britain after the Entente Cordiale, and then Britain is going to ally with Russia. This is why their group is known as the Triple Entente, because they never actually formally came together and said the three of us are going to join forces just in case an oppositional war with Germany rises up. Instead, it was like, we all just happen to be in alliances with each other, so we all just happen to be in this weird little agreement, right? So the allies are going to be between these three particular countries: France, Great Britain, and Russia. Russia, this is their old imperial flag, for any of you who are like, I thought it was red, white, and blue now. It is now. However, it looks like the French flag is just turned. Now, this is the old imperial flag, the double-headed black eagle, though, of Russia, right? And as you can see, the Entente, it's like a handshake. It's like an agreement, right? Now, the Allies, though, is not going to be limited to just those groups, okay? You're eventually going to integrate Belgium, Serbia, and several other places as well, right? Japan actually is going to join alongside the Allies as well, due to the fact that they actually are seeing some major gains for themselves. They believe that they will be able to continue their imperial conquesting, and actually also their modernization has led to them being able to actually wage wars on a Western scale, right? So the Triple Entente, as looking at this right here, is going to be made up of this periwinkle color of people. And as you can see, all these treaties were signed at different times. 1894 is going to be the one between Russia and France. They actually have a bridge to commemorate this. Then Russia and Britain in 1907, France and Britain in 1904. Now, and as you can see, these are much earlier on, right? These are much earlier on when these were made, and the Ottoman Empire is going to join their alliance in 1914, right? And this all started over disputes over the Balkan territories, right? Particularly Bulgaria, Serbia, and Bosnia, right? And this right here is just a little map of everyone that's going to end up joining in. Because like I said, remember, Italy is a weird one. Italy's a weird one because they actually came in when they decided to enter the war in 1915. They actually entered on the side of the Allies because they were disgusted with the way that the Austrians were handling the Russian occupation, right? So now, really, really quick though, this is the other big thing. So we can see looking forward that alliances are going to be a major factor, because when this war breaks out and when we get to this, when one of these groups decides that they're going to go off and fight one of these other groups, these alliance systems are going to crumble. And if Austria declares war on somebody and Russia declares war on Austria, then Germany declares war on Russia, then France declares war on Germany, and it's just going to all go down kind of like a fight in a cafeteria, right? So it's all going to just kind of implode in on itself. Now, going forward, though, militarism is going to be another major reason why this war breaks out, right? And something to kind of keep in mind is what that is, where it's coming from, things like that. So down here, I actually have a definition of militarism. Militarism is the glorification, glory, and building up of your military, right? It's the creating the military as the focal point of your society. Trying to create a system where most people in your society lean on or look to the military as a symbol of their national strength, right? Now, to give you a heads up, some of these countries' militarism values are not equal or the same as others, right? Ironically enough, Russia had the largest military, but they were super undersupplied, right? Germany had the largest supplied military. France is going to deploy more troops than Germany, but it's a very weird kind of situation, right? So economic competition, though, is going to be a big reason why this thing, the militarism thing flurries up, though, okay? Because all these different countries, Germany, not so much Austria. Austria kind of had priorities in different places. Germany, France, Great Britain being three big ones to actually consider, were constantly competing with each other for money, arms. They were trying to always have more weapons or more devices than the other one, and then also colonies, right? And countries are going to practice this militarism aspect to try and show off their strength. Now, as you can see right here, there's going to be a lot of new technologies that are going to play into this war, and that is a direct reflection of the fact that industrialism is the big thing that's changing, right? Because this glorification of the military is not just a societal glorification. It is now a post-industrial glorification, right? Because the Industrial Revolution has now had so much time to breathe. We are over 100 years out of it by this point, and now the Industrial Revolution is directly affecting military technology, the growth of the military, and the expansion of the military, right? For example, we talked about this already in imperialism, but I'm bringing it back up again. This is an example of the industrial military complex, right? So the Maxim gun and its creation in 1884 by an English inventor known as Hiram Maxim, and here he is standing with his device, right? Look at him, look at him, look at that little old beard. And this gun right here, the Hiram Maxim gun, or the Maxim gun, is a fully automatic machine gun. Now, don't let Mr. Wooderson lie to you, okay? He claims the Gatling gun is the first machine gun. I think he's not right, all right? So anyway, now the later models could fire 600. So yeah, so the earliest models that Maxim invented can fire about 200 rounds per minute, right? And then after their full production scale actually kicks up, some of the later models prove that they can fire 600 rounds per minute. However, this number is going to be diluted a little bit because there were some drawbacks, right? It's heavy, it jams, it has to have a water jacket on it. So like, for example, you see this little, like that's the barrel that the bullets come out of, and this little sleeve that's on the outside is not a silencer for any of you who like video games and stuff like that. It's actually a water jacket to keep the barrel from warping under massive like cause of heat, right? But the Maxim gun is a good example because literally it's like a moving factory for bullets, right? In a way, okay? And what I mean by that is you hold that trigger down and it will continue to fire bullets as long as it does not jam or as long as the water does not deplete and the barrel actually warps, right? So this is not, this war is going to be the very first time this gun is ever going to be used, right? And all these different countries had access to their own models of this type of gun. The very first one was actually invented in Great Britain and made by the Vickers company, right? And then some people the later model is going to be called the Vickers gun, right? Now, the Industrial Revolution is going to change warfare as the world knew it, right? Because look at all these things. You now have locomotives that are going to bring supplies to the front lines faster than they ever have before. So military lines, reinforcements, weaponry, and supplies are going to be coming to the front very, very quickly. And whoever has the most railroads can fight this war more efficiently, which is going to be a big reason why Russia actually fights this war inefficiently later on during the World War actually itself, because of their limited lack of major railways going into wartime areas, right? The telegraph is going to be an insane thing. Telegraph machine invented by Samuel Morse, right? The guy who also invented this Morse code, is going to actually be used to carry messages much, much faster. In the late 1800s, the very, very first transatlantic telegraph wire was actually laid going from the United States all the way to Great Britain. You can now send messages over hundreds of miles in an instant, right? And you actually use this device to go and then you had a person on the other end that actually transcoded it and actually deciphered it and sent the message forward. And then, of course, we also have steam-powered vessels. So this war is going to drastically change, right? And as a symbol of that industrial warfare, that industrial change, and also a massive militaristic growth, this right here is the big reason why England became an ally of France instead of staying an ally with Germany, right? And it's called the naval arms race, or the Anglo-German naval arms race, right? So this industrialism in warfare is going to lead to invention. It's going to lead to development. It's going to lead to all these different things. Well, a naval arms race is going to break out as well. And the Anglo-German arms race is all going to come down to who can create the most this type of boat, right? So the British in the early 1900s developed the very first steam-powered iron hull style warship for the Navy, right? And a lot of this is off the outskirts of an American Commodore named Alfred T. Mahan, right? But like that is just because he said that a naval power in this post-industrial, post-imperial era is how you show your world dominance, right? So now this right here, though, is the very first one known as the HMS Dreadnought. And because that thing was such a massive development, because it could travel over very, very great distances, it had like very large guns attached to it, and it could actually fire on targets that were inland. This thing became such a terrifying thing. That's why it was known as the Dreadnought, right? So as the British began to build their dreadnoughts, Germans under Kaiser Wilhelm decided they were also going to try to build as many dreadnoughts as they could as well. But since the Germans could not match the industrial aspects of the British, they did not unfortunately win this naval arms race, but this arms race leads to a lot of tension, right? And it leads to a great deal of anger and resentment between these two countries, and it's the reason why England went off and they actually became an alliance with France rather than staying in this Teutonic People's Alliance with Kaiser Wilhelm, right? So Kaiser Wilhelm, since he couldn't build as many dreadnoughts as the English could and have these great big warships, he decided to go a different route. And he decided to stick to an old German practice of unrestricted warfare using these bad boys, right? Those are submarines. That became the German device and use in 1914, right? And whenever this war breaks out, the Germans decide to use their Unterseeboots, right? So it would actually be Unterseebooten. All right, so now Unterseeboot. All right, so Unterseeboot literally means U-boat, right? That's why they're called U-boats or submarines, right? You cannot see them. They had no sonar yet. They were unspottable. So the Germans were very deadly in the water in this perspective, right? And then also our last cause for the war, big one anyway, our big like kind of marquee cause is going to be imperialism. And then we're going to get into nationalism here in a second. But that one's kind of a little bit weird because we're talking about ethnic nationality, not so much some other things. But anyway, imperialism, right? Imperialism, the thing that we spent all that time talking about, is a part of this economic competition because European powers are competing for resource-providing colonies. Now, I have a very important thing to tell you. Academic kids, please pay attention to this announcement. Now, the big thing about it is, though, imperialism, what we were talking about at the very beginning of this unit, is another very large cause for this because as a lot of these European countries are competing for these colonies, it's going to begin to draw them further and further into resentment and get them closer and closer to conflict, right? Now, nationalism is a very, very, very big reason why this war is going to break out as well, okay? Nationalism, as we know, that pride for your country, that belief in your country's genius, is going to fuel countries to want to be the best and to be the strongest, right? So as nationalism begins to progress forward, this is going to lead to a huge amount of resentment between different countries, certain countries vying and understanding and trying to advocate for others. And it's going to lead to a very, very large, crazy war when it does break out, right? So don't write this, but for example, at the outbreak of war, everyone greeted war with cheering crowds in Berlin, Vienna, and Paris. And this was written by a writer named A.P.J. Taylor. The people of Europe leapt willingly into war. So when this war finally broke out, they actually jumped into war excitedly, right? Which is a very, very strange kind of thing to explain to kids is that, like, yeah, this nationalism had boiled over so much. The industrialism and involved with militarism, and then also imperialism and the alliances are going to be so bad and so intense that when this war finally breaks out, everyone wanted it. It's a very creepy thing, right? Because they wanted to show how strong their country is, how powerful their country was, and how much better they thought they were than everybody else, right? Now, there's an interesting small component to this nationalism that you need to put a big star. So the next thing we're about to write down, put a big, big star next to it, because we got to talk about this duck-looking region right here. And we got to talk about what Pan-Slavism is, right? So this region right here is mostly made up of some of what you would consider Slavic countries, right? Mostly in this general region, these people are not Slavic. So but these people right here are, right? So now this region in particular is going to be where the war breaks out, or where it actually has its foothold and where it is created and started, right? And particularly in this area right there, that little country known as Serbia, right? So Serbia is going to be the hotbed for this, and a lot of this is because of this concept of Pan-Slavism, which is related directly to nationalism, right? Pan-Slavism is the idea or belief that all Slavic people should unify and defend one another in the creation of their own countries and their self-determination. This is going to be incited by nationalism in the late 1800s. And a lot of these South Slavic nations are going to be oppressed by people like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, right? So if we go back and look at this region right here, Austria-Hungary controlled this entire swath of territory, right? They controlled Bosnia, Croatia, and several other areas, now modern-day Slovenia as well. The Ottomans, for a time, controlled Serbia. They controlled Montenegro, Kosovo. They controlled Albania, Macedonia, Bulgaria. They controlled all these major areas, right? Now, this is going to lead to this Pan-Slavism aspect, and the Russians are going to enter into this war trying to advocate for these Slavic peoples, right? So going forward, though, as you can see, it's a very, very weird thing going on right now, right? The Ottoman Empire, jot this down, this is very important, put a star next to this, jot this down. the Ottoman Empire is dying, right? So it's dying out. Its strength is decreasing. There's a lot of very large movements trying to go back to straight Turkish rule by this group known as the Young Turks. They want a reformation of a parliament. They want to create a different style of country focused around Turkish influence and Turkish culture. And so their borders are retreating and they're just shrinking. Greece is going to liberate itself in 1830. Serbia, I believe, is going to liberate itself in 1816. Bulgaria is going to become an area that actually is going to be like available and now creating its own country lines. And so as things rolled forward, the Ottomans were constantly trying to grab these territories back. They always wanted to pull them back into their society, pull them back into their country so they could actually keep the empire state alive. This is going to fuel a set of wars known as the Balkan Wars, right? This tension in these South Slavic states, encouraged by all this nationalism, is going to fuel the outbreak of a couple of small wars right before World War I itself actually breaks out. This is going to be encouraged by nationalism, and it's the fact that the Ottoman Empire was losing a lot of its Balkan states, and it's losing a lot of its Balkan power. And it's mainly going to be pushed forward by one of these states known as Serbia, right? Serbia wants to create a unified state known as Greater Serbia, right? Leading into the later kind of World War II perspective of a Yugoslavia, right? So, or actually that's post-World War I is Yugoslavia. Now, the big thing though is that this is an element of this new idea known as the powder keg, right? So, because of these Balkan wars that were breaking out, because the Serbians are getting very mad at Austria-Hungary because they annexed Bosnia, right? And we'll talk about that here in a second. You could see that if this war was going to break out, it was going to break out in the Balkan territory. And so, metaphorically speaking, okay, as in it's not an actual thing. There's not a keg of powder and somebody could touch it, all right? So, but people and historians have began to call the Balkan states the powder keg, right? And a powder keg is a very large barrel full of gunpowder, right? And it's ready to explode at any minute. All it needs is a match, right? So basically what we've kind of cooked down to is that Austria-Hungary and its conquest or like wanting to control and create a larger state for themselves, especially in these South Slavic regions, it's going to anger a lot of these Slavic states, especially Serbia, and also not Bulgaria as much, but like especially Serbia and Albanians as well. And the Balkan states are going to become known as the powder keg because as movements progress and right after the Balkan Wars end, these Slavic states are trying their best to pull as many Slavic states away from people like Austria-Hungary. So everyone felt that if another war was going to break out, it was going to break out in that Balkan territory. So the biggest thing that you need to understand now going forward is that this whole powder keg concept, pan-Slavism, everyone's about to go into war and this thing is ready to explode. All we need now is a match, right? And we're going to talk about the match that lights the fire of World War I when we get back into class the next time I see y'all. Because it all comes down to the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, right? He is going to end up in Bosnia. Go ahead and jot these things down. We'll talk more about it when we get back into class. But I'll see y'all then. Y'all have a great one.